to the Breakout Finder podcast. I'm your host, Nate Liss. You can find me on Twitter at @AnOutrageDew. And with me back again is Mr. Ryan Lopes. You can find him on Twitter at StillRyan5. Mr. Lopes, God bless. Welcome back to the show after not even just a hiatus, just a flat out, just a cancellation of sorts.
Yeah. We consciously put our heads together. We agreed that given the state of content at the time in the world and everything else going on, football was extremely dry for us, NATO, that we said we don't see a need to record and waste our time, waste our listeners' time every single week. So we made the conscious effort. I think we agreed on taking recording once a month, maybe like every 3 weeks, maybe every 4 weeks, whatever was agreed on initially. We quickly sidestepped all that, and we haven't recorded in like 2.5 months, or I don't even know when the hell the last time was. Long story short, that's all behind us, buddy. We're here now. I'm excited. We just got over week one. There's a lot of takes lined on the timeline. I'm excited to kind of digest some of them and maybe spew out a few of our own takes and kind of plant our flags as we have been known to do in the past.
Yeah, excited to be here, man. It's been a wild break. I mean, you've been starting some new podcast stuff yourself. So what are you working on right now for the people that are unaware? Because Ryan, you may not know this, but I just made a new overlay for your live show. I don't even know if you've seen it, but is
that right?
It's spicy, bro. It's very spicy, and I did it just for you guys. So tell the people about the show and what it's about.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Matt Kelly, the very gracious host. Everyone, obviously, if they know us, they know Matt Kelly. Matt and I have a fun little quick, half an hour, 40-minute spot every single Friday of the regular NFL football season where we are giving you our favorite monkey knife fight prop bets. So for those that aren't familiar, monkeyknifefight.com, sign up, use the promo code Underworld. You get some bonus cash. You can start fucking around with us. Super, super fun. We have a beverage. We mess around. We throw out some props. Quick in, quick out. Matt Kelly's really good about keeping me in the dark until the very last second. So I haven't seen the overlay. No idea what the fuck we're talking about this Friday, but I'll know Friday at 4:45 when we record at 5 kind of deal. So I'm excited to see the overlay. I know I won't see it before then. But yeah, that's going to be the Friday spot. Other than that, on the home front, man, breakoutfinder.com. I haven't publicly announced it yet, but we have 4 new writers, a couple which have been posting already. But, I set out a tweet, probably about a month or so ago, looking for and some able-bodied volunteers, Nate, as it were, people that were interested in creating content. Got a bunch of feedback, so shout out to those that reached in. I sifted through a bunch of them, been talking to a bunch of people back and forth. Ended up with 4 people off the bat that I'm very excited about, man. So definitely keep an eye out at the website. See some content starting to churn back out again. NFL's here, so Breakout Finder boys are back.
And listen, Ryan, I want to do this for you because there's going to be a lot of people listening to this episode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the overlay. I'm going to send you the overlay right now because that's the kind of guy I am,
bro.
Just so
this is fun. There it is, the Propcast Happy Hour. That's what it is, man.
Wraps. So, nobody knows. You've seen it.
I love it, man. This is sexy.
That's gonna be how it's going down for you guys. Matt told me about the show. It's very cool. I think more people need that. I think that's something that a lot of people are getting into. It seems very trendy on the timeline right now. I haven't myself in the state of Washington quite rotated to that yet. I have myself very immersed in the world of card collecting. I got sucked into the world of rookie cards, and that's something that I'm very interested in, and I want to get into more in the future. Maybe not on this show, but I'm certainly sort of gearing that direction because for some reason I've had a flashback to my childhood, and I'm just... It's so good, crazy, man. I mean, you really a guy said this to me, and I won't talk about this much more because everybody's like, fuck buying cards, or maybe they love it. Here's the thing about it, man. Somebody said it's like the next deepest step in the world of dynasty fantasy football of owning a share of a player, right? You're buying that rookie card. You're getting behind them. So
trippy.
Yeah. So anyways, man.
Okay. Yeah. Real quick before on the card topic, you got my curiosity, sparked right here. Have you sold a card or cards for dude, I've seen some astronomical values reported on articles, whatever. Have you found yourself with a first edition or whatever the fuck the verbiage is? Have you turned a pretty penny on any of these cards?
I have not flipped any cards, and there's actually a really big market for this because the interesting thing about the card market is how quick it moves. If a player's popular, their card can suddenly rise in value. We've seen it in the NBA. A lot of these guys that were outside the bubble, the value of their cards a lot lower than guys in the bubble. Giannis, Luka Doncic, these guys. So very interesting. I haven't sold any, but I have been buying a bunch of them. Bought a couple DJ Moore RPA, so the rookie patch autos, some other things like that. Trust me, bro, I'm lost in this world. It's very cool. If you guys are interested in card stuff, hit me up on Twitter. Maybe I'll find a way to start doing more content on it because I am incredibly interested myself. But we should certainly talk about what is going down in the world of fantasy football / NFL football / whatever it was that took place in week 1, Ryan. Now, surprisingly, all offseason there was concerns about COVID-19 and how it was going to affect and translate into the NFL season, and it really hasn't played a factor, at least in week 1 whatsoever, so that has to be a good sign for people going forward. Maybe it won't contribute quite as large as we thought outside of the potential of guys not getting a lot of reps and a lot of practice and continuity. But we talk about what took place and we talk about these dynasty assets. Ryan, as you've so eloquently put it, the dynasty movers and shakers. Was there anyone in week 1 that changed positions for you suddenly, or was maybe a guy that was dead in the water that looks better to you after week 1 than expected?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer this by jumping slightly ahead on the show sheet because I want to use this spot to just talk up our guy Parris Campbell. Not to say that he was a player that likely moved up a ton for you and I, but I imagine other dynasty gamers that might have got a little anxious, jump ship early, ready to kind of fold the hand. I mean, whatever we saw week 1 from Parris Campbell, I think you're gonna quickly start to see these reps add up and the stars and the dots start to connect really, really quick. Just given, again, we've talked about it ad nauseum, the athletic profile, and now someone like Phillip Rivers, even with his noodle arm, this is someone that's going to get it done and look to Campbell's way as often as possible. So I think what we're seeing right now is Campbell setting that foundation, super young, super athletic, super dynamic, all these boxes that we had checked of him, coming out of school into the league, hobbled last year. People, again, wanted to move off of him or color him a bust, whatever it was. Way too soon, and for those that observed patience and held on and did the right thing, you're going to get rewarded this year, and then obviously going forward too, man. These stars are bright. You're going to be
rewarded handsomely, Ryan. Absolutely, as handsome as we look in these Breakout Finder hoodies. By the way,
you see these hoodies, man?
Is that not the most comfortable fucking hoodie you've ever worn?
Oh my god, I am completely nude under. No, I'm not. This is. Yeah. Yeah, no, you can see the shit. I'll tell you what, though, Nate, the hoodies are top tier. You were in the lab quite a while with these, and you talked them up, and these things hit all the notes.
Yeah, man, they are the perfect weight. They are very warm on the inside. It's just a great hoodie going into the fall season. It's just perfect, just a perfect hoodie. But on the topic of Parris Campbell, not fall. Parris Campbell in week 1, snap share higher than T.Y. Hilton, 82%, 61 snaps to the 59 that T.Y. Hilton ran. Parris Campbell, 9 targets, 6 catches, 71 yards, and a rush attempt, which you love to see. The thing was, the Colts, other than Marlon Mack prior to the very unfortunate injury, which we will get to again later, did not run the ball very well against Jacksonville. Which is interesting because due to the weather, we thought that this was going to be more of a run-based game, that some guys would have gotten loose. I'm not going to make any jokes about Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to give you guys a pass, okay? We know that Jonathan Taylor is a better runner than what we saw on Sunday, okay? Just like Clyde Edwards is a better receiver than we saw on Thursday. So we don't need to get into that. But the one thing I want to say is we know that the run game is going to be much more effective going forward. Jonathan Taylor is clearly the guy in this offense now. Nyheim Hines is obviously going to be a massive contributor as a pass catcher, but with Jonathan Taylor running the ball, there's going to be a lot more emphasis on that, which is going to open up this pass game. And the fact that Phillip Rivers has the noodle arm, as you said, is probably a great thing for Parris Campbell. Had an ADOT out of week 1, 11.9. That's similar to Keenan Allen. That's similar to DJ Moore. He's going to be around that short intermediate game with the potential to get downfield. But I think it's a good thing for Parris Campbell with Phillip Rivers going forward, Ryan. So I like it. And rightfully so, man. Parris Campbell is going to go lunar again. And it's just great. And I will say Michael Pittman, 39 snaps, 53%. He was I think the fourth wide receiver in terms of snap share in this offense. So don't sleep on him, but Parris Campbell is rocketing to the top. Ryan, my guy in this group has to be Corey Davis, right? It has to be Corey Davis. Okay. I mean, you watched the Monday night game. Did you stay up late enough to watch the Monday night game?
I did, man. And I immediately went back to all the Corey Davis talk for me circled back. We had Russell Clay probably on the last show that we did, or the second last show we did, where there was a lot of East Coast versus West Coast, like what is the best time zone for these games? And I will say the doubleheader to open the season fucking sucks for the East Coast. It was like 1 o'clock or whatever it was by the time everything was all done. But I did catch both games. And Russell Clay was the one, as I was watching Corey Davis blow up last night. Russell was the one that was saying, these players with these first round draft pedigrees and all this production profile and the age and all this stuff, even when things are looking dark for them, these are the players that he was out scrambling to acquire. He was going out to get as much Corey Davis as he could because he believed so strongly in that profile. And again, as we saw out the gates, not as pretty for our guy AJ Brown, but Corey Davis, man, back to life. It was remarkable to see.
With Corey Davis, man, I think we saw him start to wake up just a little bit at the end of 2019. You had multiple games there with 30, 40, 50 receiving yards, multiple catches. Then, of course, the playoff game against KC where he had 5 for 65 on 8 targets. So he's starting to be utilized. But I think the real issue with Corey Davis is and will always likely be a target share concern, right? That there's been health, there's been development, and then target share is the big one. And I just can't get behind these takes where people are calling him the next Devontae Parker. Are they saying that because Parker was a late breakout? Because there are some serious fundamental differences. For instance, when Parker broke out, he averaged 8 targets a game. And last season, Corey Davis averaged 4.6 targets per game. And the one year that he looked like he was going to break out, he was averaging 7 targets a game, so he almost cracked 900 yards that year. But the 4.6 targets that he's averaging right now last season was the equivalent of Russell Gage, Albert Wilson, Tyrell Williams. So you're not going to be a wide receiver one when you're going up against guys like that in terms of opportunity, but he's still a borderline top 30 guy in catch rate. He's 25 years old. He's clearly respected by cornerbacks in this league as he was the wide receiver 6 in cushion last year, 19 the year before that. The big problem here is A.J. Brown's going to be a huge logjam for him in the opportunity situation, and there's no chance he's going to be as efficient as A.J. Brown. You look at where Brown finished last year on such few targets. You're not going to get that from Corey Davis. And lastly, the problem is we have Ryan Tannehill, right? So, and people want to point out the fact that Ryan Tannehill threw the ball 43 times last game. 43 times, right? But let me drop this nugget on you. Since becoming the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, Tannehill has averaged 26 pass attempts per game. The last time he cracked 40 pass attempts was before Monday night was December 4th of 2016, which was 4 years ago. So I'm cautiously optimistic about Corey Davis, but if the target share is not there, Ryan, what are we doing?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Tannehill because that was always since him inserting himself in that role, that was always the really the question mark for me, and agreed with you. Target share and opportunity certainly comes into it. But man, talk about efficiency, what Tannehill did last year, there's no reasonable way for us to expect that type of play, that type of efficient play coming into this season. That said, him throwing the ball 40 plus times certainly gives way to those opportunities. So I'm curious to see kind of how the Titans operate this year, because we know how much the head coach and the offense likes to run through Derrick Henry. But now we got someone like Corey Davis, who I won't even say emerging. He's still here. He's ready to take off, ready to go. And then obviously you have the emerging superstar or would-be superstar in A.J. Brown. So definitely some interesting pieces there. And another little asterisk, another little sidebar, Jonnu Smith, man, he is ridiculously fast and mobile for someone that's built like a tight end. So he's definitely going to get some looks too and kind of siphon some work as well. So a lot of mouths to feed in Tennessee. And I'm curious to see kind of what Tannehill can do to kind of buoy it all and allow it to kind of grow and
that's the difference, though. This is where I feel like Corey Davis is also going to struggle, where A.J. Brown and Jonnu Smith are very successful is after the catch. Jonnu Smith was number 8 last year. A.J. Brown was number 6 at the wide receiver position, where Corey Davis has been borderline outside the top 40 for consecutive years now. And Tannehill is an accurate passer, which does play well for these yards after the catch receivers, but there's just a lot of wheels in motion here. I like the upside of Corey Davis. I would probably be looking to sell Corey Davis because I'm not sure that this is the offense where he is going to thrive, Ryan. And I said the same thing about Benny Snell last year. I said, look, Benny Snell is not going to make it in this offense. He's dust. Matt Kelly, Player Profiler, gave him a cartoon snail for his
infamous,
right?
He gave him
and we see him out there in his first action in 2020, and he looked good.
Yeah, dude, Snell's one of the prospects where like I should go back and delete a bunch of tweets because I dumped on Snell so bad. And I think most of it was justified. This guy's a 4.66 runner, doesn't pop athletically. Where he does pop is just pure collegiate production. Going back to his player profiler page, man, with the infamous Snell. This is we're talking about a 91st percentile college dominator rating. So certainly got it done. Volume wise in Kentucky. My concerns were just athletically, just kind of lumbered around. Did have some decent draft capital, 4th round pick. James Conner banged up out the gates. So opportunity was, has presented itself. Goes for over 100 yards. Things are quickly aligning for Benny Snell, and he did look quicker, faster. Not to say that he is all of a sudden a pure speedster, but he does look like he's moving at a different speed than where I thought he was prospect wise coming out. So certainly a player that I am fully prepared to eat crow on because he was not a back that I was at all ready to roster, even in deeper leagues. But it certainly looks like it might be Benny Snell's season over in Pittsburgh.
Ryan, let me say this. Predictably, James Conner is hurt to kick off the year. And it usually doesn't matter who the runner is in Pittsburgh. They seem to produce, whether it's Snell, whether it's Conner, whether it's Samuels, whether it's a 34-year-old D'Angelo Williams. Somebody comes in and produces. But, Ryan, hear me out on this. Hear me out. I actually think it's a good thing for dynasty players that Conner was injured and Snell had this sudden performance. Because hear me out on this. This quietly, this very quietly, just crack the door open, crack the door open for people that wanted to purchase Anthony McFarland. This was your opportunity right here. He's slightly buried on the depth chart. His name hasn't come up. James Conner looked like he was the guy. Snell suddenly seems like he might be the guy. Because all offseason, people were beating the drum for Anthony McFarland. Now Benny Snell has one good game against the Giants defense that ranked in the bottom 12 against the run last year, and people are not talking about him, right? I just want to remind people what Mike Tomlin had said about him after they selected him in the 4th round. He said, man, his talent speaks for itself. His stop-and-go quickness, his game-breaking ability in terms of his ability to make big plays, we're excited about him. We feel like we've got some talent in the backfield, but we feel like he's got a skill set that's different than any of these other guys in terms of his speed and open field ability. Listen, Ryan, in redraft, the conversation about Snell is strong. I understand it, especially with the injuries to Conner. He's in a contract year. We don't think he'll be here next year. But folks are crazy if they're not using this as like the Trojan horse back door to go just knock, just go knock on one of your neighbor's doors in Dynasty and just inquire about Anthony McFarland, right? Like, why? Somebody needs to go take a shot. Additionally, a 4th round guy. He's got the speed. We've talked about his profile in the past, Ryan. Why not Anthony McFarland?
Yeah, and I think this is you talk about the Pittsburgh situation, and I think to your point, whoever kind of assumes that RB1 hat does get the full workload, does produce. So I'm not sure it's ever going to be, even if it's a backup like Snell taking over, or we assume taking over, maybe he, Connor's banged up longer than we think, or, Snell is just that good where he doesn't really let go of the job. But I don't think it'll ever be a situation where McFarland is going to maybe split work, maybe get some third down looks at most. But I think McFarland's a smart grab, just given the fact that when and if Snell does go down, and assuming next year maybe Connors is elsewhere, however that situation, ends up working out. This is a spot for McFarland too. He's instantly the backup in a valuable situation where we know the Steelers like to trumpet and run out one main back. So I think McFarland, especially right now, like you said, you can probably get him for the low. Everyone's kind of worried about their Connor stock, worried about Snell. This is a sneaky spot for those looking to, again, that's Trojan horse, as you said, and just backdoor.
That's right.
Man. It makes complete
sense. I got
a
lot of Trojan horses back in the mid-'90s on my computer. A lot of them. All right, Ryan, let's talk about somebody else that might be an assumed backup running back. I don't even know why I'm leading in with this one like this.
Yeah, I'm so glad you just did that. If I know where you're going with it.
So Leonard Fournette, 5 rush attempts for 5 yards in a solid backup role, real bang up job. Ryan, what is the grass greener in the future for Leonard Fournette?
I strategically placed a Leonard Fournette question on it because I kind of wanted to get your quick 30-second history on just the whirlwind that was like that 2-week period where you and Kelly were strongly advocating for Fournette, and then I grabbed my phone and I shot you the text, Nate, hey, Fournette waived. Like, all this happened so quickly, and you and I have, we've been corresponding daily, weekly, like we always do, phone calls, text, whatever, but nothing in this medium. We haven't got a chance to throw on the headsets together here. So I would love for you to just walk me through again a quick, a minute history lesson. What has it been like to be a Fournette truther over the past same month?
It's been a wild ride, man. It's not for the weak. It's a tough battle. Okay, when Leonard Fournette looked like he was going to be the guy in Jacksonville prior to his untimely exit, unpredictable exit. Yeah. Who would have known? Apparently,
I'm not sure it was really unpredictable.
Only Evan Silva truly knew the answer to this, and for that I bend my knee to Silva. I apologize for all the things I said about him on the back doors at Patreon, and he'll never hear them. and here we are. Leonard Fournette goes through the waiver process unclaimed because you've got 32 stupid teams, including the one that cut him, and then he gets the decision of where he wants to go. I remember talking to Matt Kelly, and Matt's like, this is a good thing. We don't want him to end up on a bad roster. We want him to decide where he wants to go. He goes to Tampa Bay, which seemed like a very thin depth chart for the most part. And here he is, first game of the season, 5 carries, 5 yards. Now, Ryan, I'm going to take these off after I'm done talking about Leonard Fournette. But while I'm talking about Fournette, they have to stay on. So the thing is, we heard the chatter all offseason through preseason training camp, whatever you want to say this was this year, that Ronald Jones was going to be the guy. He had earned it, they said. And so by all expectations, Ronald Jones was going to come out in week 1 and get all the opportunity, get all the volume, get his chance to seize this role. And he got 73% of the carries and 60% of the running back targets, which was only 3 of 5. So Leonard Fournette, though, he was 3rd on the team in running back snaps, but 2nd in carries, and he only had 5. Lesean Mccoy played more snaps than he did, but I don't really know what McCoy was doing out there. I guess pass blocking. So, but when you look at Leonard Fournette's opportunities in this game, Leonard Fournette's first carry didn't come until the second quarter, which he had a 6-yard carry. Then he got blown up in the backfield for -4. Then he had 2 carries like 3 series later in the third, and then he got 1 more carry at the end of the third, like 2 series apart. So I'm not going to put much stock into this. I expected Ronald Jones to be the lead back here. What is Leonard Fournette supposed to do with 5 carries that are split up amongst 3 different drives? Not much, I would assume. So I am still buying Leonard Fournette as the most talented running back in this offense, and you can direct all your hate mail to @anoutragedjew on all platforms. And I still like him. Ronald Jones looked fine, Ryan. He looked fine. He's not a pass catcher. He's not a pass blocker. His time will come. Also, Keyshawn Vaughn. I mean, this is another situation where I got Keyshawn Vaughn in a couple of startups that I've done recently. I've acquired him in a couple of trades because, again, he's very much off the radar. Anything can happen. Leonard Fournette might not be here next year. Ronald Jones may prove that he stinks as he's done in the past, and then who are they going to turn to, Ryan? So are you buying into Ronald Jones in 2020?
Dude, I don't know what to really make of this Tampa Bay situation. It was one of those things where initially I was okay with Keyshawn Vaughn. I think he kind of got a little aggressive with Keyshawn Vaughn at one point, and I obviously backed off then. Then I'm of the mind that, I've never been a Ronald Jones guy. I'm of the mind that Ronald Jones stinks. I have also been outspoken that I think Leonard Fournette also stinks. I was on the opposite side of the fence of you and our guy Matt Kelly. I'm now, after seeing Tom Brady, quarterback for, again, super small sample size, one game. It looked kind of rough for Tom Brady for the most part. This Buccaneers offense might be a roller coaster ride, man. I don't know really what part I want outside of, obviously, if you were dug in early with Chris Godwin, if you've had Mike Evans, like these were investments that you've made for a handful of seasons now, of course. And OJ Howard got a couple looks, so maybe you bought super duper low on OJ Howard. Like, I understand having acquired those pieces from a dynasty standpoint. As far as the backfield, like, it makes sense to attach yourself to someone, the Tom Brady, running back, dumping him off, that whole narrative and all that. I get all that. I personally don't know who the hell it is, and I don't really like any of these players. Outside of, I guess you could probably sell me on Leonard Fournette being the most talented, but dude, that bar is non-existent / very, very low. That I don't know, man. If you're selling them for peanuts or whatever, I get it, and you might be able to get me to, kind of sniff around. But other than that, dude, I guess my answer is I'm just hands off here, buddy. I'm hands off.
I think the shift is coming with Lesean McCoy playing completely useless downs. I think once Fournette picks up this offense a little more, he will assume the role in this backfield. What's his future? I have no idea. I have no idea in terms of his length of time in Tampa Bay. I do like the landing spot, and Tom did look rough. I do agree, Ryan. I don't want to talk about this backfield anymore. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. I want to talk about the fact that if people got scared, if you're scared, and you moved off of Dalvin Cook and you moved off of Alvin Kamara because you thought that they were going to get traded because there was trade rumors, or you thought that Dalvin Cook was going to be a holdout potential or anything like that, you were wrong. They inked new deals. Ryan, how do you feel about these two guys? And with some of these other running backs that came in this rookie class, are they still right there, fringe top 5, 4 or 5 running back?
Yeah, I think these were two, I guess, veteran assets at this point that, from a dynasty's perspective, we wanted them both to stay exactly where they were. So certainly a good thing that we have more Kamara in New Orleans, we have more Cook in Minnesota. Those systems, those offenses are just tailor-made, tailor-fit around what they do best. Wasn't the best showing for Cook out the gates. I imagine that probably has something to do with just the time that he had missed, mulling over the contract, whatever it was. But from a dynasty ranking perspective, these players are still in that top tier for me. We wanted them to stay where they ended up. I'm glad that they got those things, the deals worked out. I'm very excited about. I think I probably have someone like Kamara just slightly over Cook. I don't know if that's a hot take of sorts, but I just think Kamara's ability as, I think the pass catching upside maybe ever so slightly edges him out for me. But again, Cook is a phenomenal talent and has some new money to play with.
I think the one thing that's tethered to each of these players from sort of an interesting perspective here is both of these guys are 25 years old. And when we're talking about this group, this new running back group, we have, in my opinion, CMC, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Zeke Elliott are 3 players that are locked in for me at the top 3, and I don't have those guys moving. Now, we have other moving parts involved, right? Josh Jacobs seems like an interesting name now. Joe Mixon got inked. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in there. Jonathan Taylor is in there. So a lot of new names. So for me, there could be a shuffle at 4 and 5, but when I look at the next year, and I've talked about this quite a bit, when we get into the next season, if we go to 17 games and Dalvin Cook's workload gets shed a little bit, that creates an interesting situation there, especially with Madison behind him trying to conserve Cook to the playoffs, knowing that he hasn't been incredibly durable. And then on the other side, you've got Kamara. What if Drew Brees doesn't return next year? What does that do for Kamara's value? We love him as long as Brees is in town. But if it's Winston, if it's Taysom Hill for some odd reason, how much do you love him then? And it makes it interesting because I think in a scenario where you go to 17 games and Drew Brees isn't there, why not Jonathan Taylor? Why not Clyde Edwards? Why not Josh Jacobs if he finishes the year with 70 targets and 59 catches? I think all these guys make a play to move up above these guys. So they're the 2 most movable assets for me. But the fact that they ink deals makes them incredibly exciting. And it's brought up another topic that I've found myself talking about a ton on Patreon. These guys on 1-year deals, guys like Chris Carson, he looked really good in that first game. The Seahawks are almost certainly going to extend this guy at some point. And unfortunately, he's already played 1 week, and you've now seen him in 2020, and his value is solidified once again, but you could have gotten him for so much cheaper. And again, these guys that are on a 1-year deal will always be a little less expensive. Look at Derrick Henry before he signed the extension. Look at Austin Eckler before he signed the extension. And Aaron Jones is another one of these guys on a 1-year deal. As soon as they sign that 4-year extension, 5-year extension, boom, dynasty value rockets up. Their permanent nature in this offense rockets up. So I like both these guys, but I think that the running back landscape is going to shuffle a lot here in the future. And when we talk about these 2020 rookies, Ryan, and we talk about the COVID-19 situation and continuity and this lack of rapport with quarterbacks and offensive coordinators and all this stuff, fading guys coming into this year, was it a good or a bad idea?
Yeah, and I wanted to put this one on the show sheet because I really wanted your take on it. I was going back and forth very briefly with my guy, Johnny Proctor. Man, we had Proctor on the show a year or so ago. Super, super sharp DFS player. Obviously dabbles in the fantasy world beyond DFS as well. But again, someone that I, follow closely, and I think his thoughts are very, very, sound in logic. So when he came out and basically said, he has no rookies in 2020 for redraft purposes, I, kind of sat back and I found myself on the opposite end of that. I have some of my most owned players in redraft, season-long leagues. I have a ton of Laviska Shenault, a ton of Jalen Reagor. Shenault, certainly a guy that the Breakout Finder gravitated towards for obvious reasons. But I, whether it was the Jonathan Taylors, the running backs, the wideouts, I found myself rather rich with rookies, and my expectations have been very high for the rookies this year out of the gates. And I totally understand those that are like Johnny, that are on the opposite side of that, given the just the COVID variable in of itself, the no preseason, lack of practices, all that stuff. I totally get that. But man, to outright stone fade the entire rookie class seems like a bit of a misstep to me, just because we saw out the gates. I mean, Jalen Reagor obviously has been banged up, but he was involved early for Philadelphia. I think that ceiling could be very, very high this year. CeeDee Lamb, now certainly a depth chart to navigate, but we're a big believer in the talent. I have to imagine, Dak, as Dak elevates, he's spreading the ball around. I think, there's a good chance for where Lamb was going to he kind of pays off as well. You've spoken about Jonathan Taylor. You've spoken about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. These rookies, for the most part, landed in some pretty sexy spots that I couldn't find myself even with the COVID variable. I did not find myself fading these guys. So I would love your take, man. Is fading the rookie class in general, was that, you think, a sharp take, or was that just kind of a bit overthinking.
I think when you look at the difficulty and nuance of a position, it can be. So I think that fading the running backs is typically not the smartest play. I think the hardest part about the running back position oftentimes is pass protection, right? Because a lot of it is instinctual and they've built up this skill set over time. So when Jonathan Taylor landed in Indianapolis, I think for most people the thought was, well, in 2020, he's probably going to get half the workload as a running back, maybe a little less than that. Marlon Mack's going to be a big factor. Mm-hmm. Well, he fell into the most unbelievable situation with the unfortunate news, right? So certainly he shot up. But Clyde Edwards, right? Same thing. What happens when Damian Williams opts out? He gets saved. So some of these takes made sense in the beginning, but I think it's really difficult to fade talented running backs in situations that were desperate for production. You look at Detroit. They didn't love Kerryon Johnson. So DeAndre Swift always felt all along like he was going to be the guy. He had some injuries here recently. He's coming back. I think that wide receiver is always the most difficult position to sort of nail year one. And in redraft, I'm probably more hands off of wide receiver for that reason. But the running backs, I'm all over them. And I have a bunch of redraft teams where I was in leagues with guys that weren't quite as devoted to the sport of fantasy football or whatever you want to call it as I was. And guys like Cam Akers, guys like, DeAndre Swift, Dobbins, these guys all fell, right? And we saw all these guys in one way or another do something great in week one. And we can't assume because we've seen 1 week of football that it was right or wrong to fade anybody, right? But I think to your point, a guy like Jalen Reagor, he's fallen into another situation with injuries, with age, with an offense that's desperate for playmakers. And an offense that runs a lot of 2 tight end sets, I think we're going to see Reagor have a great year. So he might be the one of this whole pack, aside from maybe Shenault, who looked great, and we'll get to him again, in year one that really show out. But, you look at guys like Michael Pittman. Pittman might have a slow development this year in this offense with the arm that Phillip Rivers has, with the ascension of Parris Campbell, with the existence of T.Y. Hilton, with a team that has the offensive line and may rotate a lot more run heavy than they even expected to prior to this injury, because you've got this Ferrari in the garage. You're going to take it out. You got to take it out. And I make sure that people hear this, okay? I don't hate Jonathan Taylor, but when you dig your fucking heels in as hard as I have for Clyde Edwards, you kind of have to just stick to your take. I like him. I love the situation. It just got so much better, but that's my take. I'm more often and more apt to fade the wide receivers and stand by the running backs, and that's kind of what I did. And Marlon Mack goes down for the year, as we talked about, with the super unfortunate Achilles tendon injury. And now I don't know what happens, because he's going to take time to rehab. This is a very difficult injury to come back from. In 2021, if he does come back, he's stepping into probably the single deepest running back group that's ever shuffled places between free agents, between all these rookies coming into the league, Ryan, and you guys at Breakout Finder, the writers over there, you're always talking about these up-and-coming running backs. I mean, are there 3 or 4 guys that you're really excited about next year?
I think around that range, 2 or 3 guys. I think, this is next year's class, 21 is going to be a little more like 20 was, where I kind of viewed it as certainly top heavy. And then there's just a lot of question marks, but yeah, definitely. We're going to see another small influx of talent.
I love it, man.
Sure,
so I mean, between all these other guys that shuffled around, Marlon Mack may have no choice, if he can get healthy enough, but to basically go back to the Colts on a cheap deal as the most familiar offense for him. But Jonathan Taylor, is he going to just absolutely obliterate every defender in front of him from this point forward?
Yeah, Taylor, again, we talk about checking boxes, man. Taylor checked all those boxes, and just because we find ourselves so staunchly on the Clyde Edwards-Helaire side of things doesn't mean we are, anti-Jonathan Taylor or fading Jonathan Taylor. This question I tossed at there, NATO, man, is probably more a Nyheim Hines question. I don't know that either. I mean, there was people spent all their free time this offseason talking about the same narrative, same headlines over and over over again. And the question was, is Phillip Rivers going to lean on someone like Hines in that Austin Eckler type role? And there was certainly the divide of people that said he's not Eckler, absolutely not. And the other side, which was, yeah, he can clearly catch passes very efficiently. I think so. And out the gate, man, 8 targets, 8 receptions, and a score through the air. Hines doing Hines things. And I just feel like where he was going in drafts, again, more from a redraft season-long ADP lens here, an absolute steal, assuming that workload stays relatively around that same area. Now, again, with the Mac news prior to this question being written up, and now things probably change a little bit. Maybe the Colts go a little more run heavy. They push their chips on, all in and lean on someone like Taylor, from here on out. But gosh, man, I would love your thoughts on someone like Hines, where you were on him, maybe from a dynasty standpoint. Were you looking to offload him, or maybe were you trying to acquire him knowing that Philly Rivers was coming to town? Are you surprised at his week 1 output?
I mean, I'm shocked by his week 1 output. I mean, you have to be. The guy had a rushing touchdown. He had a receiving touchdown. He finished as the RB4 overall for the week with 27.3 fantasy points. Nyheim Hines, come on down. It is nutty, but I think that this role can certainly exist. To the point that you made, though, the Indianapolis Colts finished number 5 in total rush attempts last season. They didn't rush the ball that often in this last week. So the expectation is that they may run the ball more than they did last week, especially with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, once they uncork that, once they take the cork out, it's you're not putting it back. Okay.
I'm a big fan of all the sound effects that you've incorporated, man. You've taken this time off and you've just perfected Trojan horses, doors creaking open, and now corks popping out from bottles.
Thank you.
I know
it's all about taking the show to the next level, and there's only one way to do it. Got to go over the top.
But you've really done that.
I think I was shocked. I was as shocked by the usage of Nyheim Hines, which, I mean, not overly shocked. I think the overall production was impressive. I think we all thought that we've seen Hines roll for 2 years now. And Phillip Rivers is literally maybe one of the best quarterbacks in history at utilizing this short area running back around the line of scrimmage. And he did it here. But to see Hines score twice, and then Jonathan Taylor to do what he did in the passing game, I think that put a lot of questions to rest. It doesn't change my opinion of the quality of his ability to pass catch, but that really doesn't matter. He just needs target share out of the backfield. And if that's going to come, then the sky is truly the limit for him. Got outscored by Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We don't need to talk about that. But the point is, he looked great out of this backfield, and I think he's going to absolutely trash everybody this year. If he's getting 24 touches a week, if he's getting 19 to 22 carries, 3 to 4 targets, this could be scary. So nobody got a discount on him in Dynasty, right? You didn't get a discount. You either took him at 101 or the rest of us convinced you to take him at 102. If you took him at 102, congratulations, because he scored some points, not as much as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but he scored some points in week 1. He's going to be great going forward, guys. So don't be scared if you took him at 102 and missed out on Clyde Edwards, because he's fantastic.
Right.
How about J.K. Dobbins? He scores 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
What's the next step in the evolution of J.K. Dobbins, Ryan?
Yeah, Dobbins was, for those that draft in home leagues where, as you said, they maybe aren't as devout of fantasy football students or whatever the proper verbiage is nowadays. Dobbins was one of those names in the rookie class that maybe not too many people were too familiar with. But for those that, fawned over him at Ohio State and followed him closely throughout the combine and where he landed, for those that know anything about just rushing productivity in Baltimore, given Lamar Jackson on the controls, Dobbins was the guy that if there was a short list of like 2 or 3 or 4 names that I didn't want to leave drafts without, Dobbins was pretty high on that list. I never really been a big Ingram guy myself. He's kind of at that age threshold for running back, production. And I think, we saw a lot of talk about Justice Hill last year, which never really came to fruition. But I guess the idea was that, Dobbins was another early investment for the Ravens. They they might be forcing the issue with Dobbins and trying to really bridge that next to that next chapter after Ingram and given someone behind Lamar Jackson that is that youth that has that pass catching upside and just that all around, profile. And that really was Dobbins coming out of school. So again, we talk about situation and where these players land. I mean, it's very hard to paint a negative picture about anything Baltimore right now. Lamar Jackson looked unreal on Sunday, looked even better than his MVP self last year. And now he's got someone, young and hungry and someone that does it all in J.K. Dobbins behind him, man. So I'm expecting really, really big things. Maybe I'm a bit, too optimistic in that sense, but I'm okay being aggressive on a player like Dobbins, just given the situation, given who he's paired with. We saw week 1, notched 2 scores, didn't really have a ton of, sexy box score numbers outside of that, but God, if the touchdown upside's coming already, it's just a matter of time before, the receptions start piling up and everything else.
Ryan, the next logical step for J.K. Dobbins is volume. I mean, Canton. Right. Volume, right. Then yeah. Canton, obviously, in that order.
Fair enough.
Listen, the touchdown rate is unsustainable. He had 2 touchdowns on 7 carries, but that's fine because in this offense, there's going to be a lot of touchdowns, a lot of easy touchdowns for him. Dobbins already outsnapped Mark Ingram in the first week of the season. Snap share was 39 for Dobbins, 36 for Ingram. Ingram is 31 years old. As you mentioned, Ryan, he has been serviceable throughout his career. I mean, Ingram's been a good fantasy back for quite some time, but the Ravens took J.K. Dobbins where they took him for a reason. Dobbins is an incredibly durable running back. We saw this at his time at Ohio State. Multiple games back to back to back where he had 35 or 37 carries against some of the toughest schools in the country. I think he faced Michigan and Penn State and someone else and just banging it week after week. And the guy very rarely missed a play, missed a down. And that's what this team is looking for, and the ability to run easier with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. I mean, think about this. Also, I want to point out the fact that Lamar Jackson is literally the only thing standing in Russell Wilson's way of an MVP right now, in 2 years in a row, by the way. So, but think about this for a second. Lamar Jackson's not only so deadly with his legs, but he is absolutely carving people up in the passing game. And that is one of the most unreal combinations that I have ever seen. And people might call this unsustainable because the guy threw 3 touchdowns on 25 attempts and finishes with an 80% completion percentage. But it's just really unfair to have this combination of arm talent, everything that's between the ears and the legs. I think Dobbins stands to have such an incredible career being paired with a one-of-a-kind quarterback like Lamar Jackson. But let me hit you with a crazy interesting stat about Lamar Jackson. Okay, so Lamar Jackson last season finished, there was 4 games where he had 4 or more passing touchdowns on 24 or less pass attempts. Okay, for perspective, in Russell Wilson's career, he's never had more than 4 touchdowns in a single season twice. Never more than twice in a single year. So he did it 4 times. The most shocking stat, though, is you look back at Lamar Jackson last year, he had a game where he threw the ball 43 times, Ryan. Do you know how many touchdowns he threw in that game? He threw 0 touchdowns, Ryan.
0? You got to be fucking kidding me. And then here he comes
on 24, 25 pass attempts and is routinely throwing 3 and 4 touchdowns. It's just going to get so much easier for Dobbins and the creativity in this offense and all the speed they put on the field. Holy shit.
Yeah, Hollywood,
what do you do about all that?
Just sit there and take it, I think, is really the only thing that comes
you know
to
who's
the old
sitting and
noggin
taking
here.
it, Ryan? Browns fans. Browns fans are taking it harder than anybody else. They've been put over a barrel ever since Baker Mayfield stepped into town and started shooting commercials. And sooner rather than later, Baker Mayfield is actually going to be cleaning up the stadiums that he's pretending to be cleaning up in the commercials. Ryan, Baker Mayfield, does he stink? Does he stink?
Yeah, it's one of the, we're starting to approach, as I worded it here, that uncomfortable conversation where you start talking about how, is this a guy that you're going to win consistently with, or make it over that playoff hump, that make that Super Bowl push. The pieces seemingly fell into place with Odell's arrival. They have someone like Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. They tack on Kareem Hunt. They got the tight ends. Everything really on paper is looking up, and Baker Mayfield just we saw that flash early on, and ever since that, if for whatever the reason, it hasn't been the same, and it's been more of the same to start this season. The latest, which I don't know if you saw yet, buddy, but the latest rumor is that Odell Beckham is again pushing for a trade out of town, or the Browns are trying to shop him one way or the other. Again, I would imagine that at some point this season, don't know what the over-under is, maybe week 6, week 7, Odell is on a different team, is my guess at this point if I was a betting guy. But things are quickly falling apart. I think a lot of that conversation starts with Baker Mayfield's play and kind of how you view him as a signal caller right now going forward, because things look dark, buddy. If I'm a Browns fan, they probably haven't left that dark mind state, but it really doesn't look.
Can
like
we just get a straight swap, Allen Robinson for Odell Beckham? They just both don't want to be where they're at. Ooh. Why don't we just straight swap them, right?
Ooh.
Get an all-time elite talent in Odell Beckham. You get a younger guy in Allen Robinson. They both don't want to be where they're at. Both their teams are not very good. Yeah, Ryan, I think that we're getting to the point now where we really need to think about what's going on with Baker Mayfield. And because of this, I'm in a dynasty startup right now. It's not even done. This is so stupid. You don't do a dynasty startup into the regular season. But I decided to do one over on Patreon, patreon.com/I'm outraged.
Sidebar, how many of those fucking 16 teamers
we are doing our 7th league, Ryan.
That is the most maniacal thing I've ever heard in my entire life. We're in league
number 7 right now, and I was in the 18th or 19th round, and I decided to roster Case Keenum because, to be quite honest with you, Ryan, I'm not sure how much longer this team is going to put up with Baker Mayfield in this offense. If you get this dissension with Odell Beckham, if I don't know what happens next with Nick Chubb and his underusage in this offense, and suddenly frustration starts to mount.
Yeah.
An organization that's sick of losing. They burned a top pick on Baker Mayfield, and the up and down situation is pretty annoying. And we've seen Case Keenum actually play competitive football on multiple different occasions in his career. And either the Browns are going to ride this thing into the dirt, and Baker Mayfield's going to find serious competition next year, or if it's early enough and they still think that they're competitive enough, we may see Case Keenum get an opportunity, because maybe Baker Mayfield is not the guy, Ryan. Maybe he's not the guy.
That's part of that uncomfortable conversation where, I imagine there's been some whispers, Nate, some little.
Oh, now you're doing them.
Some little whispers. See, yeah, I had to.
Can you do the Charlie Brown? Maybe that's
exactly. Those are the whispers that go on in the Browns building, is like the Charlie Brown ones. Definitely, man. I think this thing falls apart. Give it less than a month right now. Under that 6 week, a line right there for sure. It's
you're
gonna get ugly
saying
in
less
Cleveland.
than 6 weeks, Baker Mayfield's going to be cleaning up popcorn kernels and hot dogs on the stadium ground.
Now, less than 6 weeks, I think Odell's on a different team. I think maybe they probably just ride it out with Baker for a little bit longer, or maybe around that same time, maybe they ship Odell off and they say, "Hey, Case, we need you now, buddy."
You know who doesn't need Odell, Ryan? The Rams.
Who?
Because they've got one of the top most underrated wide receivers in the league, Robert Woods. Can we talk about Robert Woods, Ryan? Tell me your thoughts on Robert Woods.
Yeah, Woods came up on the prop cap happy hour. For those that caught it last Friday, there was a very interesting Rams. We were talking Dallas Rams, Kelly and I, and it was Woods receptions, or I think it was Cup receptions, one of the two. For me, it was a no-brainer. Woods. My logic on the show at the time was that Woods was who I was riding with, redraft wise, ADP wise. He didn't really separate a ton from Cooper Kupp. They kept they're very, very close. But to me, Woods is just in my eyes a superior player. There is a bit of a gap there. Kupp hobbled a bit coming into the season, kind of helped be that deciding factor for me. And Woods out the gate, man, showed out. 8 targets, 6 receptions, 105. Didn't notch a score, but again, just quiet, I guess, steady production is all we've been getting from Bobby Woods over the past, couple seasons. My comment again last Friday was that ADP has never really caught up to that steadiness. I guess it's kind of Jarvis Landry-ish in that sense, where it's just consistent production. It's just easy fantasy points, reliable fantasy points. And I think there's a couple other things we can unpack here if we want, as far as, maybe Goff really didn't look as bad as certainly that I thought. I was fading the Rams in as a whole. And they looked pretty good. So either was Dallas overrated and their defense is a good bit worse than we thought, or were the Rams and Goff underrated and Goff kind of showing out a little bit? And obviously having a guy like Bobby Woods to turn to doesn't hurt. No, the situation,
not at all.
Rather.
And Dak Prescott, seeing him throw the ball 39 times is exactly what you want in terms of a fantasy football outcome. But we saw Goff towards the end of his season last year, and I had talked about this with some people because there was sort of, questions back and forth. Does Goff stink? Is Goff good? What are they going to do with him? Is this team going to be able to take a step forward? And you go back and you look at Jared Goff's production from basically week 11 to week 16, and Jared Goff was great. I mean, he doubled his touchdown output, had a completion percentage of almost 67%. So he looked really good over that course of time, and I feel like it has translated a little bit into this season, and he has so many weapons around him. They went out of their way to get Van Jefferson. I thought they were getting Van Jefferson because they were not going to extend Cooper Kupp, but that was never the plan all along. They have extended Cooper Kupp and added Van Jefferson, and they've added one more talented, savvy route runner. So they've got Everett, who got banged up. They've got Higbee, who I could care less about, but he's played well in this offense. They've got Woods. They've got Kupp. I mean, there's so many weapons for Jared Goff, and I think that's going to be the key. And even the running backs in this backfield, just spread it out for Goff. Let him hit the open guy. And if you give him enough talented players that can get open on their own, I think you're going to find production. And Robert Woods is just, I mean, to your point, he's Tyler Boyd, he just, nobody, year over year he produces. He's not sexy. His ADP never moves. Guys like A.J. Brown just suddenly jump ahead of him. These guys just they just fly right ahead of him suddenly. Haven't done anything.
Love the sound effects, man.
They haven't done anything to earn the fact that they should rise higher than Robert Woods, who's been so fucking consistent.
Bobby Woods disrespect, man. It happens. It happens far too often, Nate. We're here to put an end to it. I'm
tired of it. I agree. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And you know what else I don't want to hear? I don't want to hear the disrespect that's being thrown on Bryan Edwards because of that stat line. Ryan, you are the resident Raiders expert, for better or worse.
Unfortunately.
For worse.
Yeah, for worse.
I know you have to cover your face when you go outside.
Yeah.
You can't talk to your friends about it.
No apparel, no fan
have
apparel.
All the apparel you purchase sent to the neighbor's house, and then they shuffle it over at night.
Yeah.
Under a cloak of darkness. And so, tell me this, Ryan. Bryan Edwards, he had the playing time, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the Edwards stat line or number to gravitate towards is he led the wide receivers and wide receiver snaps. 47 for Edwards, 42 for Ruggs, 30 for Renfro, 12 for Aguilar. I guess the asterisk there is that Ruggs did get a little banged up to start the game, so he was, certainly hobbled on the sideline a little bit. Did check back in, did finish the game, which is good for those that find themselves, truthing on the behalf of Ruggs. But the takeaway here is that Edwards has done nothing but completely trend up throughout the entire offseason, whether it's, the highlight videos that we've seen, just a clean bill of health is really what we were after, given where he was kind of projected to come out of school in the draft, and then the unfortunate foot injury. Now 100%. It falls in an interesting spot in Las Vegas with Derek Carr. Again, we don't have to talk about Derek Carr now or ever, but the fact of the matter is this is a player that has risen up the depth chart very, very quickly. quickly, where you were getting him in redraft leagues, and certainly where you were getting him in these dynasty startup leagues, was a very, very comfortable spot. I would say lean towards maybe more of a bargain side. So Edwards is a player that could pay off very, very early. If not, certainly looks bright into next year.
You said it. There's not much I can add to that. The 75% snap share was huge in this game. He had one lone target. That's not a cause for concern, especially in an offense with that level of time on the field. We love him. Breakout Finder loves him. He was one of these guys that was identified amongst this rookie class, and the Breakout Finder is a fan of him, and we know that he's a much more polished route runner than I think was given credit for. We've heard comps to Michael Thomas, which would be incredible because we know that Derek Carr is an accurate quarterback, and at some point this connection is going to find itself working out, so I'm not concerned about him. But Ryan, there was another player in the Breakout Finder that actually scored higher than Bryan Edwards, which is shocking because Edwards had such a high breakout rating. Ryan, oh my God. Now the Breakout Finder told you guys, before any of this happened, it said, hey, listen, grabbed you by the collar and pulled you in and said, listen, asshole, for $5, for $4.99, plus some add-ons, you're gonna know everything. You're gonna dominate your rookie draft. You can trade that fucking 102. You can grab 3 picks in the second round. You're gonna hit gold, man. You're gonna hit fucking gold.
Yeah, it's cursing.
And guess what? You struck gold, okay? Laviska Shenault comes out week 1, outscores every other rookie wide receiver to my knowledge by dropping 13.7 fantasy points in his first game. Number 2 in the Breakout Finder. Ryan, talk to me about Laviska Shenault, man.
Yeah, Laviska, again, I let off the show, man. He was one of the guys that, and I've, I'm sure I'll get some folks in my mention where initially, very early on, prior to the curtains being open to me behind the Breakout Finder, Laviska Shenault was a player that I had some concerns about, and I'm sure Kelly will probably pull up the audio of my initial ranking of Shenault. None of that matters. I finally saw the light. I came to my senses. I comfortably planted my flag, and Shenault, as I said earlier, was a player that I found myself that I wasn't leaving redrafts without. I needed Shenault on my roster, especially where he kind of fell to 13th, 14th, 15th round for the less savvy drafters. Maybe in your home leagues, a player that they just didn't recognize the rookie name. He was going in a very, very comfortable spot. And again, the Breakout Finder has identified him for his dynamic ability. 6'1", 227, slots into a very interesting offense, a fun offense. And there's been a lot of parallels on the timeline about, Gardner Minshew really is who we thought and who we wished Baker Mayfield was or could have been. So the Jaguars offense sans Leonard Fournette now, but with DJ Shark, with Laviska Shenault, James Robinson out of the backfield, some very interesting pieces, a lot of grit on that offense. And again, someone like Laviska fits right in, man, and can do so much for any offense, and certainly the offense in Jacksonville, whether it's, split out wide, in the slot, out of the backfield. Again, that dynamic ability, good players find themselves on the field in multiple different roles because they just know how to capitalize, man. And that's what Viska does. So I am big on Shenault, man. I am way too heavy on Laviska Shenault this year, heavier than I thought I would be. So I need him to certainly, pick up where he left off week 1 and just carry that on throughout the entire season.
It just feels so goddamn good. It just, you just try. You put yourself out there. You just try so fucking hard. And then these guys they go out in week 1 and they just play amazingly with quarterbacks that they've never played with, and they had no offseason. They didn't know anybody. Laviska, they didn't even know who Shark was. He's like, who are you? He's like, I'm the number 1 on this team. And, Shenault's like, I thought I was the number 1 on this team. And he was the number 1 on the team last week. And guess what? The Jacksonville Jaguars did their fucking homework because Shenault ran the ball 2 times in this game. That's what you love to see. They're getting him involved everywhere. He is going to be so exciting going forward, and you could have had him for much cheaper. Ryan, we got a couple more names we got to crack on here. Actually, you know what? We're just going to go to one last one. We're just going to go out on this one. This is your boy. You've been beating the drum on this one. You're a big fan of this one. Let me just say this. As a Seahawks fan, I watched 3 wide receivers go for over 100 yards on this secondary. Not the best situation to run into, but Ryan, Calvin Ridley has been bullied and punked and trash talked and downplayed and just basically pretzeled up into a ball to the point where a lot of owners were scared to draft him. They didn't want to get made fun of. They didn't want to get picked on. Ryan, did people make a mistake not taking Calvin Ridley when he was available in these rookie drafts and these dynasty drafts and these redrafts?
Yeah, this is another example of Nate. We don't get a lot of things wrong often, but we do. I'll speak for myself. We do get a couple things wrong here and there. And Ridley was a early rookie evaluation that I just, again, much like Benny Snell, I just didn't have any interest in, didn't really care. I understood the Alabama pedigree. I understood the draft capital, 86th percentile 40-yard dash, 4.43 speed. Like, I get it. Like, there's enough there. Some boxes were checked, but he just wasn't my cup of tea for whatever the reason. I was quickly proven wrong, and I quickly, disengaged the take lock, and I quickly reevaluated, and I said, man, this is a player, again, we go back and talk about situation. This is a player that I want to saddle up with and ride. Matt Ryan, that Atlanta offense, just what they do playing opposite Julio Jones. He is in what I thought was one of the better situations, a perfect situation. And again, maybe the Seahawks will look back on in a month or so where it's just a bad secondary and it wasn't, necessarily didn't do much matchup wise for him. But man, Ridley's been, in my opinion, been trending up for, a little bit now, and someone that I ranked, I thought maybe aggressively. He was my wide receiver 10 coming into the season for season-long purposes. And I think out the gate, man, over 100 yards, 2 scores, his upside is pretty tremendous. I think Matt Ryan, that Atlanta offense just airs it out, improved offensive line. They add Todd Gurley. I get all that. There's just pieces that have stayed in place that they've added. This offense is going to be one of the league's best again. And I think Ridley, again, playing opposite Julio Jones is someone that's going to just completely feast and benefit as a result.
I think that there was a concern for Calvin Ridley when Julio Jones signed his extension. But I think we need to look at this from a better point of view. Number one, Julio Jones, up until the point that he's no longer capable, is going to be taking that number one coverage, which is a great thing for Calvin Ridley. And two, this Atlanta offense is going to sling it all year. So there's not going to be a shortage of target share. Calvin Ridley finished as the wide receiver 2 overall in fantasy football. Ryan, so give yourself a pat on the back for that one. But I also want to point out the fact that the Seattle secondary was so bad that Atlanta had 3 top 11 finishers this week. Not a good thing. I think that says more about Russell Gage's potential going forward. Julio and Calvin are going to smash all year long. You're probably not going to get your hands on Calvin Ridley at this point. Or maybe Calvin Ridley continues to trend the direction of Robert Woods and just never gets that respect year over year for whatever reason. It's just baked into his profile. But Calvin Ridley was fantastic, killed Seattle, put up 33.9 fantasy points on the day. Even Jamal Adams couldn't do enough to shut this whole situation down. So we pray to God things get better. But as long as Russ keeps cooking, we don't care if you drop 50. So, Ryan, I'm glad to be back. I know you're glad to be back. Anything else you want to plug for the people? Remind them about your podcast with Matt Kelly.
Yeah, we got, again, every Friday, we record at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Mr. Kelly does his thing in the lab, gets the pod out, a couple hours thereafter. So you have it going into the weekend. So, indulge, get yourself caught up on all the relevant props and kind of align yourself with where Kelly and I are throwing some extra side cash. The Propcast Happy Hour, part of the Roto Underworld family of podcasts, man. monkeyknifefight.com, promo code Underworld. Exciting things there, man. Every Friday. Exciting things over at breakoutfinder.com. Again, I'll probably retweet the tweet at some point in the coming week or so. But if you are a interested, curious writer, you find yourself, fawning over the thought of writing about fantasy football, dynasty, Devy, redraft related content, please reach out to me. We will have a chit chat and we will see where things go from there. But again, big things coming. There is, Nate, and you can speak more to this. There is, I think, is still a planned website revamp revamp coming Q1 next year. Matt Kelly's going to be spearheading that. There's a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes. Exciting things, man.
Content
very excited
keeps
to be
flowing,
back.
man. And listen, if you guys want one of these comfy hoodies, join over on Patreon, patreon.com/I'm Outraged. One really cool thing that we're doing is every Sunday, me and well over 100 patrons are in the Discord chat, and we are answering sit-start questions. We got to the root of a lot of problems this last week. So if you want to get a hoodie, you want your Discord information added, you're curious about who to start, come join us. Love to have you guys there. Lots of fun stuff going on there, Ryan. So we will be back next week. We're probably going to have a guest, and this thing's going to keep rolling. So I'm glad to be back. Ryan's glad to be back. We'll see you guys next week.